Aragorn is the guy that we all want to be. But why? As a psychologist, I thought of this quite extensively. And my answer is complex, but mainly I believe it is because Aragorn is moral. Very moral. Most people today seem to be looking for two things, two seeming virtues that should grant them happiness. These two being money and fame. No one, however, seems to care about how the ancient philosophers viewed happiness. For people like Aristotle, happiness and morality were virtually identical. But what is morality? Morality is the study of morals. And a moral is a conduct, a behavior, course of life in regard to right and wrong. Essentially, as we can see in Aristotelian ethics, it was all about virtues and vices. Virtue is a moral strength, a high character, or goodness that you try to acquire, while vice is some moral fault or wickedness that you try to destroy within yourself. Aragorn is the man he is because he cares about good and evil, or vice and virtue, and he focuses on living with virtue. Most people today seem to not even believe in good and evil, or vice and virtue, and if they don't focus on money or fame, they often focus on mental health, because a lot of people today suffer in this area. Even psychotherapy, however, with all its beauty and good things that it brought, doesn't focus on the idea of morality. The only two instances where I have seen morality mentioned in my psychotherapy endeavors, and I've been studying it for years and years, are the work of Jeffrey A. Cutler, where he mentions that if you want to be fully mentally healthy, you also have to be a really good and moral person. And then Viktor Frankl, who mentioned that helping others is a great way to stop overthinking your own anxiety and depression issues. This meme that I'm showing you here depicts this beautifully. Modern man killed his soul, and then he wonders, why the heck do I feel not right? For soul was, for the ancient philosophers, all about acquiring virtue and trying to get yourself rid of all vice. And this was the very cornerstone of your entire life. This was what you lived for, not for money, not for fame, you lived for this sole purpose. And we can see that with Aragorn. So truly, the reason why Aragorn is so cool to us is because, well, not the hair, not because he's good looking, well, it's because he's moral. He's a good person with capital G. Furthermore, Lord of the Rings is such a good story that it could be described as an archetypal story in psychology. Archetypal story, according to Jungian psychotherapists, is a story that contains some very deep truths about life and about the human psyche in general. And this seems to be the case with Lord of the Rings, because why would we be crying so much at the end of these movies? Or when reading the book, why would it resonate so much? Well, it does resonate because it's a reflection of us and our psyche and our very own troubles in life. Tolkien was a devout Catholic, and thus he believed in what Jungian therapist Robert Moore would call the central archetypal story of one's life. Robert Moore said that unless you have some story at the center of your life, you will live solely for your own ego and not for some higher good, which Robert Moore used to call transpersonal other, and which was often called God in many cultures in the world. And God is precisely what we can also see in the world of Lord of the Rings, not only because Tolkien was a Catholic, but also because God can be seen as the highest possible good that a human being can aspire to. And this would be precisely what Aragorn aspires to also. He's not in just for his ego, he's in for the highest possible good, which we could call God. And as Tolkien said, The Lord of the Rings is of course a fundamentally religious and Catholic work, unconsciously so at first, but consciously in the revision. According to Saint Aquinas, who is very celebrated by Christians, there are 4 false gods, and those are money, power, pleasure, and fame. All of these are tied to the human ego, and Aragorn lives for none of these. Instead, he lives for the true God that can be imagined, as I said, as the highest possible good that human being could strive for, as a sort of Jacob's ladder of virtue. Today, according to Moore, there are not many people who do not have ego at the center of their psyche, at least in the Western civilization. Aragorn definitely had this transpersonal other as the center of his psyche, which was his mission to become a king, but also something that we could call a belief in God, if we truly take God as the highest possible good that you can aspire to. This is why Aragorn refused Eowyn, for example, and remained faithful to Arwen. That is why he abandoned wanting to go to Gondor and become a king immediately, just to rescue two hobbits who wouldn't mean much in most kings' or would-be kings' eyes. God can also be seen in Lord of the Rings in the form of Providence, like when Gandalf suggests that Bilbo and Frodo's finding of the ring wasn't mere chance, but rather something meant to happen, hinting at a larger purpose. There are many instances like this, and if Aragorn or Gandalf were merely calculative and logical as we are today in a modern scientific world, they would think the whole sending Frodo to Mordor is insanity with 0% of success. However, they believed in this providence and this luck of sorts, that in the world of Lord of the Rings favors and helps those who make good and moral choices. The moral choices in Tolkien's world are different from the movie Dune, for example, in that they are always very personal from moment to moment. They don't care about pragmatism or the ideal way of doing things. They are more based in something like the belief that if I act good, the world will help me in the end, because I will be aligned with it and with its highest purpose, which is God, and everything's pointing out to that. So if I point out to that, God will help me. How? By the world helping me. Because the world is aligned with God, and if I will be, the eagles will help me. The luck will help me. Gollum jumping on me, wanting to kill me, and that luckily destroying the Ring of Evil will help me. These beliefs are all very real in the world of Lord of the Rings, although they are never explicitly stated because Tolkien hated allegory and he didn't like to make this story all about God and to even mention the name of God, although there are deities in the world of Lord of the Rings that he goes to in his other works. Robert Moore also believed in the concept of pre-mythological, pre-scientific evil, and he noted at the fact that we trivialize evil and we relativize evil, and that's not something that people did in ancient stories. In ancient stories, the belief in evil was very real, and such is the case too with Aragorn. While most people today don't believe in evil, or they think it's relative, Aragorn really believes in it, which further helps him make moral choices. Modern person is more like hobbits from Hobbiton, who are kept in their comfort zone, seemingly shielded from evil, and so they don't even believe it exists. However, though, Aragorn is very aware of evil, as we can see right away from the beginning of the books when he scolds hobbits oftentimes about evil and its true dangers. Thus, Aragorn has all the energy and action at his disposal and is truly capable of fighting with the evil in his life. And you also have an evil in your life. You have your depression, maybe your anxiety. Maybe you could be a better person than you are in so many different areas. But we do not go that route. We don't follow it because we like to live in Hobbiton with wealth, power, pleasure, and egotistical honor. And that's not what Aragorn did. Aragorn wasn't like hobbits in the Hobbiton. He left his comfort zone, and that's why Aragorn lived such an adventure. You cannot really fully have adventure in the psychological sense, or in any sense, in that matter, if there's no evil. If there is no obstacle to overcome. if there's no opposite force to you that's trying to take your win away from you, and it has real life consequences not just for you, but also for other people around you, then it will be very hard to be moral like Aragorn. Not just moral, it will be very hard to have the energy of Aragorn, to do things, to act out on things, to live your life as a challenge, to help those in need, to be as cool as Aragorn is, because he is cool, and this is a modern day language, but he is cool. And he is cool to us because he is moral, because he believes in evil, because he lives for something more than his own ego. We need to consider all these things and more, and truly try to be like Aragorn ourselves. And how to do that? Well, the 3 things. Start really placing morality at the center of your life. And it will be very hard if you don't have a connection to something that's transpersonal other. It can be God, it can be your whatever you can think of, but if it's just your ego at the center and you want to be moral because I want to be like Aragorn and be cool and, that's not going to work. You gotta be moral, and you can only be fully, truly moral if you got some greater story at the center of your life. If there's no story and it's just a story of me and my life and this is what I did in the past, this is what I want to do, here are my goals so I can have wealth, fame, pleasure, and honor, it's not going to work. So start having some story, some myth, read ancient stories. You can even have Lord of the Rings as the center of your psyche. But those were stories. That's what initiated people. That's what made them change their ego as the center into transpersonal other. And every ancient society, every tribe in Amazonia, they all have stories they tell to their kids in order to transform their psyches from child psyches with ego at the center to adult psyches with transpersonal other at the center. Only then you can fully live moral life. And then, as you are more moral and you live with this, you really need to get the borders of what's evil to you and start fighting that, because that's what Aragorn did. And according to Robert Moore, there is an archetype, a sort of part of your psyche that he called warrior, or the inner warrior, or the warrior archetype. And when you awaken this part of the psyche, it will give you immense energy. But this part of the psyche only gets awakened when it has an enemy to fight. And this part of the psyche has its ethics. It has a very strong division of what's good and what's evil. And if you don't believe in evil, it will never wake up for you. We will take a look at other aspects of Aragorn from a psychological point of view in some further videos. If you want to see those, click on the subscribe and click on that ring bell that's right next to it so you don't miss any future videos on Aragorn. And thank you for watching this. Leave me a comment down below if you're interested in something more surrounding this topic. And I'm gonna see you with some further videos. Have a good one and peace. And by the way, if you'd like to have a session with me, just let me know on obsessivepsychologist@gmail.com. I specialize mainly in anxiety, depression, and initiations, just like what I shared in this video. Have a good one and see you guys later. Peace.